Cinemodities, late night movies with Rob and Zack. This is a podcast about cinematic oddities, where we discuss any media that is too bizarre, abnormal, or off-kilter for contemporary audiences. Occasionally, these projects gel. Most times, they crash hard into the realm of obscurity. Join us as we delve into the cult classic swamp. I'm Zack.
And I'm Rob. And here on Cinemodities, we want you to put a certain picture into your head. The slight detail of it is you in your place of residence, or maybe somewhere you have access to a television. And you have people you know around you. Or they could be strangers. I guess that's something that we haven't talked about a lot on here. But you have the opportunity to show these people a movie, a visual media. And when you show them this thing, you want to get some reaction out of them. Maybe not a reaction. Maybe you want this to raise certain questions. Maybe you want to have a discussion with these people about something that this movie acts as a catalyst for. We've talked about this before on Cinemodities. We asked a very philosophical question at the start of a previous episode, and I want to do that again today. I want to pose a philosophical question to everyone out there. Are we ready as a species for a woman with 3 breasts? Zack, what do you think?
You know what? I don't think so. I think we're ready for a Truman Capote Jabba the Hutt before we're ready for that sort of evolution in mankind.
You know what? I have to agree. But we're going to get into that in this episode of Cinemodities. We're going to hit those real hard, life-changing questions. And I don't think it needs much introduction because we mentioned a woman with 3 boobs. But yes, today we are talking about Total Recall.
Yes, we are talking about 2012's Total Recall with Colin Farrell, Rachel Weisz, maybe, I don't know, it could be her. Oh no, Kate Beckinsale, same person, doesn't matter. And Jessica Biel. We are talking about 2012's remake of the 1990s classic Total Recall.
Did Colin Farrell play the woman with 3 boobs in the remake?
No, but he should have.
Oh, he didn't. I thought he did play that part. I only saw that once. Well, I think I saw the first 15 minutes and I turned it off because I was so upset. And of course, Zack is joking. We are talking about the real Total Recall, the one with good old Arnold Schwarzenegger, directed by Paul Verhoeven, coming hot off of RoboCop, right? This was the movie followed RoboCop.
Yep, and this was right before Basic Instinct, too.
Oh, Sharon Stone. I think I have to start this right off the bat by letting you, Zack, know, letting the audience know that for me, while we're going to talk about should this be a Cinemoddity, should this be a late night movie, for me, this is unfaltering a Hall of Fame movie. This is something I consider to be a perfect movie. I don't think I have any problem with this movie, and I love it. I am just a huge fan of Total Recall, one of my favorite movies of all time. I had to get that out of the way, Zack. That's going to frame the rest of my discussion about this. Very different from Book of Henry and Men, Women of Children, wouldn't you say?
Just a little bit.
Just a tad.
Just a little bit.
Oh, but it really is. It is amazing. It is enthralling right at the bat. If you've never seen the original Total Recall, check it out. It is well worth your time. When was the first time you saw this movie, Zack? How old were you when you saw this movie?
I am glad you asked, Roberto, because I think I probably saw it on from a Blockbuster or a home video chain. I don't remember that exact moment, but I can still remember being in Walmart and my father buying me the 2-pack of Total Recall on DVD and Arnold Schwarzenegger's The Sixth Day, which is another quasi Arnold Schwarzenegger doppelganger movie.
Yep.
I think that's why they were paired together. I remember because we also just came out of a double feature of Spider-Man and Men in Black 2 during the summer of 2002.
Ooh.
So I probably saw this in around 2000, late 2000, maybe early 2001 for the first time. Because my father, this for a fun fact, everybody knows at home, this is a fun fact. Rob's going to like this. My father had back during the late 80s, my father had a summer's free preview of HBO. And so he bought 150 blank videotapes and recorded every single movie he could. So he had this little cabinet in our garage when we lived in Florida. And he had all alphabetized and Dewey Decimal System. So he had a little catalog book. Funny thing, I actually had the catalog book right in front of me.
Oh, jeez. Blast from the past.
Blast from the past. And a fun fact. in that. So that's how I watched this. I had like this shady, not bootleg because it was legal. You can record things off TV. But that's how I was first introduced to it until I got my DVD copy during the summer of 2002, which I still have to this day, and I was watching it this morning preparing for this episode.
Wow. So for the audience out there, this was not planned. Zach did not know I was going to ask him this question. I've never known this about Zach before. I did not know he was going to respond that way.
I was 8 to 9. To answer your question, I was 8 or 9 years old when I saw this.
Yeah, I have to actually answer. I found this movie through my father as well. My dad is a huge Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, and I think when I turned like 8, he was just like, we're going to hit all of Arnold's movies. And we watched really, all of them. And that's when I saw Total Recall 2 with my dad when I was young. Look at that.
How about that?
Did you love it when you were a kid? Did you love it after the first viewing?
I absolutely love this movie when I saw it at the time. Like Rob was saying with my father, I adore Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well,
like I said, I worship. Like I loved him growing up. Like to this day, he's still like one of my heroes. Like he'll be on TV, and I know he's like doing he was on TV the other day. He's like, they're like, Arnold, what are you doing? I'm suing the federal government. No, I'm suing the oil companies for first-degree murder. I'm like, oh, and like everybody's like rolling their eyes, and I'm like, oh, Arnold, you're such a kidder. And I'm not kidding. He's actually doing that, by the way. He's suing the oil companies for first-degree murder.
Zach, that was every other time you do an impression, I think of Marge Simpson. That time, I actually thought of the person you were impersonating.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I know. It's funny. Every impersonation sounds like Marge. They all sound the same. But no. So going back to Arnold, I was introduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger. When I lived in Florida, I went to Universal Studios Orlando. And I wanted to give Rob a little more context into how horrible my taste in music is. I was waiting to see the band, the A-Teens, who were primarily known for doing ABBA covers. Mamma mia, here I go again. How can I resist you? And so my mother, the reason we went there because I wanted to see them during Slime Time Live. And so my mother had to wait online like 2 hours to get tickets. So my father and I, right around the corner, there was Terminator 2 3D, Battle Across Time. And so we went on that. And then afterwards, like after we came home and like a week later, I'm like, I want to see Terminator. So they showed me Terminator 2 because that's like that's like the most innocuous Schwarzenegger like movie because there's not that much violence and most of it's like cartoonish and over the top.
The first one is much darker and more cerebral, I would say.
Yeah.
It's not just an action movie.
No. So, but again, they showed me Terminator 2, and that's what really got me. And obviously, much like Rob's father had all Schwarzenegger's films, my father had like his entire like cabinet. So, like, I watched everything from Running Man, Total Recall, Raw Deal. What else was there?
True Lies.
True Lies.
Love True Lies.
I guess I'm not sure if that might not have been there because that was a '90s one.
Oh,
that might not have been there. But we probably got that from like the rental store. So like I would imagine that was in there. But like all again the classic Schwarzenegger, Predator, and like I've never gravitated toward Predator. But no, so that's how
Predators. What about the plural of it?
No, that's the greatest film of all time.
We'll get to that. That's a tease from me. We'll get to that.
Greatest plot twist in cinematic history starring Topher Grace.
And a pizza. Starring Topher Grace and a pizza.
We'll
get to that.
And creating a running gag. So, yeah. So, I absolutely... I don't know. I don't think it was one of the... it was toward the top. Like, obviously... But, like, I watched Terminator ad nauseum. I have a memory during the Thanksgiving of 2000, my uncle was over with his 3 kids, and they were watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and I said, let's turn this off. I want to watch the Terminator. I was 8 years old. I actually said that. My father yelled at me and said, let people watch the parade. That's who I was as an 8-year-old. I was watching that, and I was telling people on Thanksgiving I was watching the Terminator at 8 years old. But Total Recall was always toward the top. I was up there with The Running Man. And did you say you didn't like that?
No, I said I loved that Running Man.
Okay, you like that. Okay,
Running Man was probably my top tier Arnold movie when I was a kid, and Total Recall was probably my second.
Okay, so we're on the same page then. So it's like the top like two or like three or four. So
Yes.
no, I always loved Total Recall. It's always been one of those movies. It would never be like, I wouldn't say this is one of my favorite movies like off the top of my head. If someone said, "Oh, name your favorite movies," or even your favorite Schwarzenegger movies. Like obviously, I would just knee jerked to the Terminator films. But it's always been there. It's the definition of a spectacularly weird, solid film.
It's so solid. Every aspect of it is it's enthralling. It keeps the right pace. It never lets you down. It keeps you guessing, and it's fantastic. It's a wonder of a movie, I would say.
It's great. It's legitimately a great film.
Yes, and I'm so glad we're talking about it, especially after the last two nightmares, Book of Henry and Men, Women, and Children. I'm so glad that Dean Norris decided to move to Mars. That's really what I'm happy about, that he decided to move to Mars so he could be in this movie.
Unfortunately, he moved there before they put in the radiation-proof domes.
Yes, it is a little difficult to see Dean Norris. I think if you aren't looking for Dean Norris while you're watching Total Recall, you won't pick him out. I think that it's difficult to pick him out. What do you think?
Once you know who you're looking for, it's pretty obvious.
Exactly, but if you just said, "Hey, watch this whole movie, where's Dean Norris?" I don't think you would have a 100% success rate. I think you would have a good 50-50 split. Some people would never see him because that's you
disagree.
Get some hard makeup on him. It's over half of his face, I would say.
Respectfully disagree.
Respectfully disagree on the amount of makeup or how many people would see him.
Notice him because behind the scenes peek real quick. When we were looking at Dean Norris films for our series, it's like he was in Total Recall, and the moment I saw the name, I said, "Yup, know who he is." I knew immediately without any hesitation.
Okay. See, I had a picture, but I didn't have it immensely. Like, sure, fair. We disagree on that point. But he is in this movie as an irradiated Martian. He's a minor part. But of course, we're going to talk about his role in this movie, how this movie plays into his other roles and things like that. But of course, this is a movie we love, Zach. What do we do? Do we have to talk about it at all?
No, this is going to be the stories episode. We're going to end. We already discussed the bad remake. We talk about the three-breasted woman. Where else is there to go, Rob?
Okay, I guess I do have some points to hit, because while I make my notes, while I make my commentary, especially with this type of movie, one I've seen tons of times before when I'm watching it and recording my thoughts on it, I have a good bit to say, and it's kind of refined. This is probably my favorite aspect of the movie. I am really into behind-the-scenes stuff. We've mentioned it in a previous episode. I really like when you get things from different perspectives. I really like those subtle changes in something we've seen before, and there's a part of this movie which I'm basically going to ask if Zack has ever noticed that I absolutely love. The first part of this movie is on the planet Earth. The second part of this movie is on the planet Mars. In the first part of the movie, on Earth, whenever they advertise a soda, it is Coca-Cola. In the second half of the movie, when we get to Mars, whenever they advertise a soda, it is Pepsi. You only see Pepsi on Mars, and you only see Coca-Cola on Earth. I fucking love this. That if people moved to a different planet, the oligopoly of soft drinks would say, "Okay, you get this planet, we get that one." It is never mentioned in the movie. This has nothing to do with the movie. But if I have watched this movie so many times and researched this online, people agree with me that they have that stratification of product placement, and I absolutely love that, Zach. Did you ever pick up on that in watching this movie?
I've noticed the Pepsi on Mars. I said, figures at a second-rate planet, we get the second-rate soda.
Oh, shots fired!
Hot take. There is that level of just background in this movie that you don't really like. When Rob suggested, when we agreed upon this movie, there's certain movies that I think I cannot scrutinize as a scholar of film, because they're just sacred. Like Star Wars is one. Like I can never look at Star Wars with an objective lens unless it's The Force Awakens. Then it just hits me. Much like how the Clone Wars punched Rob in the face, The Force Awakens punches me in the face with
well, it was a slap in the face for the Clone Wars, but it did prove it was smarter than me.
Okay, yes. Unfortunately, Force Awakens proved how much smarter I am than the filmmakers. But no, there are certain movies like the Terminator series. I will never be critical of that series, no matter what they do with it, because it's insulated with childlike nostalgia. So it's like, so as I was watching this, I was trying to sit there and analyze it more, because usually when I put Total Recall on, and it shows up, I put it on maybe at least every 3 to 4 years it'll show up, just because it's something different. It's a great time passer.
I would say 3 to 4 months I watched Total Recall.
Oh, really? But when I was younger, maybe. Like, that's one thing worth noting, too, is that as you get older and one's film library gets larger and larger, you stop watching the things you watched ad nauseum. Again, I probably can recite the entire script of Terminator 2 if I concentrated hard enough. But at the same time, like, over time, I do not watch that as frequently because I've expanded my horizons. But now it's on the rotation probably every few years. But no, so I'm scrutinizing this film more than I did. And there are some small things in the movie that I just picked up on that I've never thought of before. Like, okay, this is a really small thing, but the video communication. I was thinking about the technical process of what that must take to choreograph that. So it comes to, like, nowadays we take it so, like what we're doing right now. Rob and I are talking to each other over Skype. Whatever this magic device that connects us through beeps and boops of electronic frequencies, that's completely wrong. But
packets, again, they're packets, Zach. Yeah,
just like packet of oatmeal. So you sit there, you go through the whole thing, and so no. But like, you think about, like, when someone's talking like on FaceTime or Skype or Google Hangout, like someone talks and says something, you look at the camera on the phone, you interact with it in a special way. Think about it, in 1989 when they were making this, like when like Schwarzenegger and Michael Ironside and Sharon Stone like are all interacting with each other, they did not know what that's like. Like, think about it, Paul Verhoeven put a camera in front of them and said, "Okay, you're recording a video message to someone," and then he had to replay that on like a little device in front of the actor, who obviously has to try to sit there, interact with that. Never mind the original actor interacting with nobody. And I'm like, things like that make me just how forward thinking, like something like that we take for granted now in the movie, like in like Men, Women, and Children. Like, everybody's talking over the phone or FaceTime and Skype, and it's just like, oh, it's been around forever. How can we?
They know how to act in that situation.
Yeah, and I think if at the time, though, Paul Verhoeven had to obviously figure that out. That's such a small detail of this film that you don't even realize that had to be planned and thought out. Never mind all the other insane things that are going on and moving pieces in this film.
Absolutely. You make a great point, Zach. Your point is absolutely true, and it generalizes to the fact that this movie holds up. Like, this movie stands the test of time. You could watch it in 1989, you could watch it in 2000, you could watch it today, and it is just as good of a movie, I think.
Ask me again, how often do I rewatch this movie?
How often do you rewatch this movie, Zach?
2 weeks.
Just 2 weeks? That's all you got?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Have you brought any fruits or vegetables onto the planet?
2 weeks.
Excuse me?
2 weeks.
Imagine me twitching very heavily right now as I tug on my ear and it comes out of my head. Anytime, just like I said, like Rob said, this is a movie that's always kind of like in the back of your mind, especially if you've grown up with it. And like, anytime you're doing something, and like you'll be somewhere, someone's like, oh, like oh, I'm going on vacation. Oh, where are you going? I don't know, generic city. It's like, oh, for how long? 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I do that anytime somebody asks me about like a duration of time. And it's like, oh, what? Like someone's like, oh, it's like, oh, I have a doctor's appointment. Oh, how far in advance? 2 weeks. And I always try to say it in the best version of that possible. 2 weeks. Except when somebody asks me if I have any fruit or vegetables to declare. Then I don't say it.
Zach, you're killing me.
Don't say that. Just for the record, if you're going through
killing
customs and they ask you if you're going to declare any fruits or vegetables, the last thing you want to say is 2 weeks.
You are killing me, Zach.
That is the panic button. Do not do it.
I got another one for you, Zach. You ready? Do you know who Ray Baker is by name?
I do not. Off the top of my head.
Not off the top of your head. Okay, Ray Baker plays McClane, or Mr. McClane, the salesman, the recall salesman in this movie.
Oh, okay.
So he is the fast-talking, Arnold, you're talking about old history. Our statistics show that recall is safer than ever, you know? And you can be a secret agent. You could be, that dude, the fast-talking salesman. He plays in many TV shows and many movies that same character, the fast-talking salesman. That's what he does best. He's really convincing, is that. Ray Baker's in Freaked as a fast-talking salesman. Ray Baker is the salesman from the EES company who is talking about freakifying the workforce so they never have to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. And Randy Quaid is like, this guy's good. And the head CEO of EES goes, we stole him from Coca-Cola or something like that. In just as small of a role, in the same role as a salesman.
How about that?
So there we go. That was one of my next points. Another point that I have, something that I actually want to ask you. One of the scenes in this movie, I was about to say one of the famous scenes in this movie. I think they're all famous because of how, classic this is. But we get the scene where, Arnold takes the Johnny cab. He, physically drives the Johnny cab. He rips the actual robot out of the front of it, and he drives it to his construction site to, look in the briefcase where he sees himself recording the video or whatever. And before he gets in there, the Johnny cab says something like, it'll cost you 18 credits. And Arnold goes, sue me, I'm not going to pay you. And the Johnny cab freaks out and accelerates and blows up.
The fare is 18 credits, please.
Sue me, dickhead.
We hope you enjoyed the ride.
Why does it accelerate? It screams and accelerates and blows up. Why does this happen?
In the future, Johnny cabs are judge, jury, and executioner. If you don't pay that, there's no debt collection agencies in the future. So there you go.
So this is. I said earlier that this might be a perfect movie for me. This might be the one kind of crack in the armor. Now that I've seen Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and I've said that robots should not have personality. Johnny Cab should not have personality. Johnny Cab should not be able to get angry about not getting his fare paid. Or if he could get angry about it, his response shouldn't be just to accelerate forward. It should be a little more detailed than that, right?
I think he's short-circuiting, and I think it's just convenient timing, the Arnold one-liner with the short-circuiting.
You know what? That is fair because Arnold has yanked part of the controls out of the machine and thrown them in the back of the car. So there could be some malfunctioning going on. Drive!
Well, like I said, there's a couple of things in this movie that I picked up on that I had never noticed before. Like, the first thing was the video communication. And the second one was I've seen this movie dozens of times, and I never picked up on it. It's funny you mentioned Ray Baker, the salesman. After Arnold is in the recall machine, and he's with the woman. She's like, "Well, I won't get any souvenirs." Mm-hmm. As that scene starts off with, and there's no explanation for it. The scene begins on a close-up of a TV screen, and it's a man doing exercises with a bar behind his back. And he just keeps doing the exercises, and there's not any explanation as to how this is a vacation or how it ties in to this woman he's trying to sell her on. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. It's really brief, right?
It's there throughout the entire scene because it's playing on the TV, and it's just a clip on loop.
Okay, I don't know if I picked up on the clip on loop, but I do think I know the reveal that you're talking about when we first see it. It's
just there. It's just like, but I won't get any souvenirs. He's like, not true. With our packages, you'll get mugs, T-shirts, whatever the dialogue is.
Okay. And
on the TV screen, it's a guy. All you see is it's a close up of the middle of his back, and he's muscular. He's just doing an exercise. And it's in the middle of the frame. The camera. I'm pretty sure the camera's locked down for that entire shot. And as you see the receptionist, or you see the technicians on the little computer screen freaking out trying to get a hold of him. Mm-hmm. And the receptionist is and jumping out of her chair, banging on the glass window. And while this is all going on, there is a shot of a man exercising. It's there throughout the entire scene, and it serves no purpose. The screen could be like what he shows Arnold, just all this information or really poorly or really primitive like CGI stuff.
Mhm.
Yet it's just fitness, like exercise B-roll.
I know what you're talking about. I've never really thought about it in a larger context. I think subconsciously I've always kind of thrown it off as what I've expected from Arnold. That's why he's famous, his bodybuilding and his workout things and stuff like that. So I've always kind of, I guess, subconsciously thought if they needed something in the background on a screen, that could be something they put. In the context of the movie, with Arnold being as buff as he is, and the whole jackhammer scene where it's just him showing off his muscles in the beginning, like before the recall thing, I could see that as Arnold just going, hey, here's this. We have a screen we need to fill. Let's use this. And maybe it's Arnold, maybe it's not, but it's something related to that. Does that make any sense?
No.
Does that answer your question?
No. It's just your response is almost as inexplicable as the scene or the shot itself, because it does not serve a purpose. Why? Like I said, it's intentionally there. It's done. It's in that shot for a reason. But I think it's there because Paul Verhoeven's like, ha ha ha. Because Paul Verhoeven sounds like Goldmember from Austin. I'm not sure if you've ever seen him interviewed.
Yes.
He sounds like he's like, I love gold. It's like I want to shoot Arnold.
You need more people. You need more people with the guns because they shoot the guns, and the audience likes the action with the guns.
These two elements are the most important of everything. You know, everything is dominated by these two. All the world, whatever happens, is dominated by sex and violence.
I love gold. The look of it, the taste of it, the smell of it, the texture. I love gold so much that I even lost my genitalia in an unfortunate smelting accident.
Gold.
Guns.
So that's just one thing I picked up on. I consider the fact that it's like staring you in the face because like it's in the middle of the frame.
Fair. That's something that I think that I should look for again when I watch this movie again. It's hard not to notice it once you notice. Once it's there, it's like you can't look away from it. We'll do that in an update. We'll have to do that in an update, Zach.
Yeah. In 2 weeks. We'll do it in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So you sit there. So like one thing I've always been fascinated about this film. It wasn't until the last 5, 6, 7 years is that like you read about a lot of like I'm not sure how much you've read of Philip K. Dick stuff, but usually his heroes are like everymans. They're not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I think I know where you're going with this, and I want to retort. I do know I've read that before Arnold, they considered Matthew Broderick for the role.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've read that from a few sources.
Well, like I said, I'm looking online right now and saying like Richard Dreyfuss or Patrick Swayze, and those make sense. Like Richard Dreyfuss is obviously supposed to be like an intentionally like wimpy looking man.
That's what I thought with Matthew Broderick, the wimpy aspect. But he was younger when this movie came out. He would have been like a youthful aspect to it.
Yeah, and like you think about though, like I know a lot of people have complaints. Like a lot of people have complaints with Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Or like, oh, the first 10 minutes of an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie is trying to rationalize why a guy in this circumstance is like every time he walks into a room, why aren't people just saying, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" It's because he's this larger than life human being. And like one thing I gotta give Total Recall credit for is like they make a real outside of the jackhammer scene very early in the film. They do a very concerted effort to hide his muscles. Like he's always wearing like a long sleeve shirt. He's wearing pants. He has like that green. Like he wears that green jacket pretty much until like the very end of the movie.
Yep. And then he's in like a spacesuit. Well, at the beginning he's in a spacesuit when you don't really know it's him. Even the scenes when Sharon Stone and him are fighting, he's kind of covered up.
Exactly. Oh, there's something he was mentioning those Sharon Stone's like fight scenes. All she like her entire movie is just like punching him in the dick. Like every single fight scene with her, she like goes straight for the dick. It's like because there's a line in the movie where Melina's like, "What have you?" Like obviously grabs his crotch. She's like, "What have you been feeding these things?" He's like, "Blondes," which might be the greatest line of dialogue. And like that might be a top 5 Arnold Schwarzenegger comeback. Like that's gold.
He's so good. He's so good at the retorts. It's amazing.
But like I think like that's the fun thing about this movie. Like obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger going back to like his first roles, like not counting like Pumping Iron and like his like weightlifting like stuff that he did. But like Conan the Barbarian, Terminator, every 80s movie he was involved in besides like Junior and Twins.
Yep.
It's like besides the comedies, it's like he's always known for just being the behemoth. And even though he does that in this movie, like again, he's like, what's his friend's name? The little like the Italian man who does the jackhammer with him.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about, Manny or something.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah,
some 2-syllable simple name like that.
Yeah, it's like he sits. I love in the movie. Like everybody gets he gets cornered, and there's like that's the only thing I gotta say about this. And I think people have kind of we'll get into this in a moment, but like people have kind of retconned it. But it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger is like never in any sort of like danger in this. Like there's never a point in this movie. It can be said for most of his movies where you feel that he's in danger. Because like you feel like like Arnold Schwarzenegger is like 5 or 6 people gang up on him. You're like, okay, how's he gonna get? It's like James Bond. It's like, how's he gonna get out of this? Like it's a fait accompli. You know he's getting out of it. And so like there's a couple of scenes in this where he does get like beaten. I think like in the hotel scene, like after he kills he shoots the whatever you want to call it, the doctor or whatever it is in the head. And like the wall just explodes and like
oh my god,
swarming in.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. I have to interject because I was holding off from the beginning. We need to talk about it with this movie, and do we want to get into it? I honestly believe the whole point of this movie is the question: is this his fantasy or not? That's the premise of this movie to me. While you're watching it, when you're done watching it, it's all, is this his fantasy from Total Recall or not? And you're hitting so many points that I want to talk about, because each of those scenes you mentioned, you have arguments on either side. And do we want to get into this right now?
Yeah.
Do we want to dive into the whole premise of this movie? I have one thing. I have one thing to say before we get into the premise of this movie.
Okay.
I got 5 kids to feed.
Hey, man, I got 5 kids to feed.
You got 5 kids to feed?
I got 4 kids to feed.
You should send them to the dentist.
Now we can get into the premise of this movie.
Okay.
How do we start? Do we start with our opinions and then argue them? Because clearly you have to take a side.
Okay, well, I have an interesting theory on this. You go ahead first, because I've got a theory on this, and I'm going to bounce off you.
Okay, I'm going to preface my opinion with a story, very much as Zack likes to do. Since we decided we were going to talk about this episode, I rewatched Total Recall a lot. I love this movie. I rewatched it, and before we recorded this, I had the opportunity to ask someone else who's not related to this podcast if they had ever seen Total Recall. Luckily enough, they had, and we got the chance to talk about it. And I was a little unfortunate because I asked them this question. I asked them the question of the movie. What do you think? Do you think it's real or it's his fantasy? That's what the point of this movie is, as far as I'm concerned. And their response, Zack has never heard this before because it happened literally yesterday. Someone looked me in the eyes and said they relate Total Recall to Inception. That it doesn't matter if he's dreaming or not. It's just the story. And I could not disagree more. Inception is the ending. The ending is, ooh, there's a twist. It's a good twist. I love Inception, but that's not what the whole premise of Inception is about. You're not constantly wondering if Leonardo DiCaprio is dreaming. In Total Recall, there's a scene that establishes the concept of the movie being that the audience should question their reality. What do you think, Zack? What do you think about that comparison?
Oh man, that's oh my god. Okay, how do I condense this? Because that's a giant can of worms that just got opened. First to the Inception thing. As I was watching this, I found the similarities to Inception uncanny. I'm watching this, I'm like, wow, like the more and more as time goes on, the kind of veneer on Inception's kind of disappearing. As time as that goes on, that movie's like, that movie ain't as great as it once was. Like there was a lot of novelty in that movie. And he borrowed heavily from this. Like Nolan does. Nolan borrows heavily from... He stands on the shoulders of giants.
Yes.
As I know, even going back to when I was younger, I watched this movie. I always knew that was a twist or that was a question. Because at the very last line of the movie is from Melina and goes, you could kiss me, what she say, kiss me and wake up? Or you could kiss me before you wake up?
She says something very, very generic. And she's like, kiss me now before it's too late or something like that. And Arnold says, something along the lines of, "Oh man, I hope I'm not dreaming." Like, it's Arnold who has the dreaming line, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and she says, like, "Kiss me before you wake up."
Yeah, she says something along those lines, and Arnold has the actual line about, like, I hope this isn't a dream. Yes.
Well, he says something like, because this all seems like a dream, or this is all, it's like a dream. And then she goes, "Well, you better kiss me before you wake up." And then we have the swelling of the music and cut the credits.
The white, you have to acknowledge it cuts to white. It doesn't cut to black. It supersedes to white. It doesn't cut to white. Like, the sun gets brighter and the whole screen turns to white.
Well, I didn't.
That's
even pick
important,
up on that.
I think.
Well, yes, it's important though, but at the same time, I always knew that was a component of the film. But when I grew up watching it, I never looked at it that way. I was along for the ride. Like, I watched this; it was a straight narrative, point A to B. He wants to go to recall, and all this stuff just happens to him, and he's caught in the middle of a giant conspiracy. That's how I always, again, as a child, then going into a teenager who didn't really, like I said, I never scrutinized this movie. I never looked at it trying to pick it apart, its mystery.
So you would say during those periods, you thought the whole movie was reality, is what you're saying?
I wouldn't even say that. I didn't even look at it that. I didn't think about it. It was just, I'm enjoying the movie. It's like riding a roller coaster or riding a simulator ride, whether you be at Disney World or an amusement park. It was just, I was on it for the ride. I wasn't scrutinizing it at that level. I knew it was there.
How do you have that? How do you even take that stance, Zach? When I was 8, I had an opinion on this movie.
Well, good for you. But I was just along for the ride. Again, as an 8, I knew that. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I was ignorant to that component.
Yeah,
I knew it was there, but I'm along for the ride. And plus, again, to be fair, I wasn't showing, again, on the playground at 9 years old, we weren't talking about whether Total Recall was real or not. It's like whether Quaid or Hauser or all this. Like, I was the only person that watched it. Much like how I live in a world with my Cinemodities being for a part. Like, it should be called, like, when Zack does, like, Rob does late night movies, and there might be there's other people there. Zack has late night movies, and the only other members are the Star Wars action figures in the ships above him, waiting to bludgeon him in his sleep. Those are the only other participants to late night movies with Zack. So, like I said, so I never really looked at it that way. There was never any sort of debate. My parents never looked at movies with that sort of depth. So, but this time I was deliberately, like I said, I didn't want to just go along for the ride. I wanted to really scrutinize it, so I had something to discuss when we were doing it eventually. So I decided to watch it with that in mind. So obviously you're going through the entire thing, and I think, and Rob's not going to like this, he's going to call me indecisive. I think there's enough evidence either way. I think if you took a little tally sheet and you went, okay.
Zach's looking at my screen. I just face-palmed myself.
Yes, you did. I think if you really wanted to, you can make arguments for dream reality. But I'm gonna get, okay, before Rob takes out the revolver with the one bullet in it, I'm gonna give him something to chew on. And this is an idea. The scene in the film after he talks to Ray Baker, and the scene begins with him in the. Is there a name for the machine? Like that gives them the memories. Is there a name for that?
I think I have always referred to it as the recall machine. Fine. Unprofessional as that is.
All right,
the recall machine.
I know, like in Men in Black, there's the deneuralizer, there's a neuralizer. I was just curious if there was a sci-fi name.
I think it's just the recall machine.
Okay, recall machine. So the scene begins with him in the recall machine as the two technicians or doctors are plugging it all into him, and they're asking him all the questions about what kind of woman does he want. And you have all this. Yes. I think it would be interesting. Like, again, I don't like fan edits. I would love to show this movie to someone with the beginning of that scene and then going all the way through to right before he wakes up in the Johnny cab. Excise that scene from the movie, and I think the movie plays 100% differently.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
No, but there's no. You blew my cover. There's no picking out who Melina is. I think if you
you're cutting out the biggest piece of evidence, I think, that he is in a fantasy. That's something I didn't say before. I am taking the opinion that he is in recall. This is all a fantasy of his. And in that scene that you're describing, Zach, did you pick up on the fact that when the scientists are going around, they're setting up everything for the recall machine to take into effect, one of the scientists, the guy specifically, he pulls out like the chip that he's going to put into the machine, and he literally in the movie we have the line, blue sky on Mars.
Yeah,
that's a new one.
Yeah, I know.
That is key. That is crucial.
I know. And on one of the computer screens, it shows the same imagery of the
pyramids. Yes, the
upside down pillars, or whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
Like I said, that's in there though. But there are things in the movie, like I said. But at the same time, though, if it's all a dream, how do you explain them how do you implant Sharon Stone in there being a contingency factor of having a doctor being sent in to do you feel that the doctor trying to stabilize him, is that real, or is that all part of the fantasy of living out a secret agent fantasy?
I think it is all part of the fantasy, because the whole beginning of the movie, when you're talking with Ray Baker as the salesman, when Arnold's in the machine talking to the scientists, they all speak about this process as a trip. Like the scientist says, "Have you ever traveled with us before?" Ray Baker says things like, "When you take a trip with Recall, you're going to have all these great experiences." They are selling a ride in your memory. And that's why it makes sense to have all these weird aspects come into play. That's the product that they're selling. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to me.
Okay. Well, here's my question now. Okay. I don't feel strongly either way. Call me indecisive. I enjoy the movie. Like I said, it's kind of like riding a roller coaster. Then afterwards saying the third dip didn't feel as high as the fourth dip, despite the fact that it's like I'm enjoying it for the thrill. I don't like scrutinizing things that I have nostalgia for.
Yes.
But for the sake of argument, that doesn't make for compelling conversation. So I'm going to ask, okay, is the whole film a dream, or is it real until he goes into Recall and he wakes up in the Johnny Cab?
I would say that's the switch. Reality is up to the Recall, getting in the Recall machine. That's what I would say is the end of reality.
So then how do you explain Molina showing up in the very beginning of the film in his dreams? That's just something that he has. So, okay, again, I'm just...
Yeah, go for it.
I'm being devil's advocate here. So you have, in the very beginning of the film, he has a dream and Molina's there with him, and Sharon Stone gets jealous of this. And then later on, we see Molina in the actual dream program. Like we see her, like I said, on the monitor in the Recall office.
Yep.
She's there. So who got that information? That is a photorealistic Molina from his dreams. And he obviously didn't have time. They're obviously curating the female companion on the spot right there for him.
Yes. So this is kind of the joint. This is kind of where, I think all of the arguments, not just my argument, not just your argument, but all of the arguments, this is what makes the movie interesting. Because of this scene at the beginning, we haven't said this at all. The very first scene in this movie is Arnold dying while he's in a spacesuit.
Yeah.
You can't tell it's Molina, Rachel Ticotin. You can't tell it's her until you see this again. Like, if you see this movie cold, you don't know it's her later on. You have to have a keen eye, I think, to pick up on that. You never see her face. You see kind of her silhouette of the lower part of her face. If you want to look at that part of the movie as something that should occur later on after they know each other, yes, it doesn't make any sense. But I prefer to visualize or conceptualize that scene as just a dream. I don't necessarily think that the person Arnold is with is Molina. It's the woman he is hoping to meet in his dreams about Mars. Does that make sense?
But it would tie into the whole thing about what Cohagen and the fact, and Hauser, and this was all an elaborate ploy. Because obviously he had a preliminary relationship with Molina, and that's why she gets annoyed with him so far into it.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. This is the joint. This is where arguments cannot be made. That is the beauty of this movie. That is the beauty of Paul Verhoeven. He has made something that we cannot steadfastly argue for one side or another, and that scene is one of the reasons.
Hasn't he said that it's a dream? I'm pretty sure I've read something where he said it's a dream.
So, yes, I have read that Paul Verhoeven is of the school of thought that it is a dream, that it's all his fantasy and recall. That's what the director of the film believes.
This is one thing where I don't like directors commenting on the ambiguous nature of their films. Rob has never seen Blade Runner, but I'm going to make a Blade Runner comparison right now, and it's kind of, I don't care. Blade Runner's not a good movie. Don't watch it. But it's, like I said, I hate Blade. I don't hate Blade Runner, but I dislike it almost on the verge of hating it. Okay. But it's like Blade Runner. You watch the original cut of Blade Runner, there is no reference of Deckard being a replicant. And then, like, over the last, 30 years, Ridley Scott's like, yeah, he's a replicant. The entire sequel is going to be about that. And I'm like, there's no. And the funny thing is, the screenwriter for Blade Runner has said, that was not my intent. That was never discussed during production. He is making all of that, not even during editing. He's making that in, just years of recollection claiming. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of these filmmakers. They're getting older. People are coming up to them saying, what happened? What happened? And eventually they just give them an answer to shut people up. And I wouldn't be surprised, 15, 25 years from now, going back to Inception, Christopher Nolan's like, he was dreaming. It's all a dream. Just leave me alone. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Yep. And I think that's what it comes down to, is that, like I said, Rob said, it is very ambiguous. And that's why, even though Rob was burying his head in his hands before when I said there's enough evidence on both sides of the aisle, I think there is, because you can bicker back and forth. There's no definitive answer to this. There's a lot of evidence for both sides.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I am totally agreeing with Zack in the fact that you can make a solid argument for either. I could sit here and play the character arguing against what I actually feel, but I was burying my head in my hands more for, I just want you to have an opinion. Yes, there's evidence for both, but you gotta have a thought. That's what I'm saying. Hank in the Book of Hank said it best. Violence isn't the worst thing in the world. Apathy is. You gotta have an opinion on Total Recall. That's the point of the movie.
Yeah. Unless you're Zachary and you like to just ride the roller coaster.
This is my punishment for my disinterest in men, women, and children. Zack is taking a very neutral route on one of my favorite movies of all time.
I'm taking a very beige vanilla path. I have no strong opinions either way.
But I am clear. I am clear in my belief that I think it is him in the recall machine. This is a fantasy. I don't even think that it's him freaking out in the recall machine. I think everything is going according to plan, and this is the exact experience he's supposed to be remembering. And
so
his
dream begins at the moment of Ray Baker in the weightlifting video, and everything goes awry, in your opinion. That's the beginning of the dream.
Yes, I can rationalize to myself, there's so many scenes in this movie that Arnold is not involved in. We get so many scenes from the perspective of the bad guys or from other characters that Arnold is not involved in, and I can rationalize that because the company selling you a memory experience would have to give you that to give you the full story. Think of this. If you are implanting a memory in somebody of an experience of a vacation, you need all possible context. It can't just be, I don't know what's happening to me. I'm running from people. Oh my God. You need every single layer of a real story. And that's what we get in Total Recall.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a solid movie. I can't argue against it. It's there. It's well crafted enough that it provides two sides of an argument without canceling the other out. So no,
that's one of the reasons I love it so much, is because it lends itself to the two interpretations.
No, I guess I can't argue against this movie. This is a very, very solid. But I think, okay, now we've discussed whether it's the dream or reality, and Rob is very definitive team dream, and I'm team let's just enjoy the ride. I like that team. So I want to talk about how kind of bonkers this movie is. Because one thing that people talk about this movie, and it's, I don't know, would you say this movie now is kind of firmly in the realm of cult classic?
Oh, 100%. This is a cult classic as far as I perceive it.
Okay, but it's worth noting that I was doing some research on this today, and this movie made an insane amount of money for the time it came out in. It came
out number one at the box office, right?
In 1990, this film made $120 million.
Holy shit!
That in 2000, in today's dollars with inflation, that's like $260 million. This movie, this movie would not make. If this movie made like 40 million today, it would be considered a lie. Worldwide, it made in 1990s dollars 261. By today's dollars, that'd be around $500 million or so.
Oh my god, that's amazing!
For back in the time, that's astounding. And I think it was like what? I think for 1990, it was the 7th highest grossing film of 1990, right between Hunt for Red October and Die Hard 2, Die Harder.
Was Die Hard 2 the one that made more than it?
No, Total Recall made more money than
so
Die
Hunt
Harder.
for Red October made more money than Total Recall.
Yes. The only movies that made more money
Still
that
Sean
year were
Connery.
Home Alone, Ghost.
Was that the number one?
Yes, Home Alone was number 1. Number 2 was Ghost with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze. Dances with Wolves, Pretty Woman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Hunt for Red October, Total Recall, Die Hard 2, Die Harder, Dick Tracy, which will be a Cinemodity at some point,
Dick Tracy!
Yes, and Kindergarten Cop.
Oh, Arnold had two charters. Wow, in that year. Look at that. Okay.
So, I think you cannot just getting back to my point real quick. You cannot overstate how weird this movie is and how much of a mainstream hit it was.
Yes, you're right, because this movie is crazy. If you've never seen this movie, the plot is Arnold Schwarzenegger may or may not be a secret agent who figures out a way to bring oxygen to Mars. That's the plot of this movie. Without the dream stuff, reality versus fantasy, it is about him bringing oxygen to Mars, I would say. Right?
Okay, this is the description that's on IMDb. A man goes for virtual vacation memories of the planet Mars. An unexpected and harrowing series of events forces him to go to the planet for real. Or does he?
That's better. That's much better.
Doesn't explain. It does not let you know anything about what kind of ride you're about to go on.
No, not at all. It has nothing to do with using a civilian as a shield on an escalator. It has nothing to do with pulling a fucking Pokeball-sized piece of machinery out of your nostril. It has nothing to do with 3 boobs.
No, I think the sad thing about this movie though is that its lasting cultural impact will be the 3-boob woman.
I have read that the actress who portrayed the 3-boob woman hated herself after she did it. Like, she thought it was so humiliating.
Yeah.
And Zach's right. That is the cultural impact of this movie. Not the whole, oh my God, they fucked our minds with what was it real or not. It was that there were 3 titties, and we got to see a guy fondle 3 titties. Yeah,
I guess that's the only. I think that's an issue with this movie. It's this movie that made. Because I'm going back to the 1990s, top 10 U.S. grossing movies. And you look at those movies, and I'm trying to think. Out of all those movies, the only one that we still talk about regularly is Home Alone. That's the only movie. You could sit there and stop people in the corner and be like, "Oh, out of these movies, which do you remember the most?" And I think almost all of them would say, "Oh, Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci."
If you gave them the list, yes, but you did say Pretty Woman, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't have the same. Not everybody knows that movie. Yes, if somebody's over the age of 40, they'll get that. But I think you show this same list to a 15-year-old, they will know Home Alone.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Absolutely.
I think for everything, and maybe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, just because of the brand name.
Sure, even if they haven't seen the movie.
The brand. Yeah, the brand. Yeah, that's more the brand than the name. So I wouldn't even qualify. I wouldn't put that in there.
Can I say that the woman with the 3 boobs dies in the movie? I think that's something that gets swept under the rug a lot. She gets shot 4 times. No one ever talks about that.
By the greatest character actor in cinematic history.
Ooh.
Michael Ironside.
Yep. He is much like Naomi Watts is a gift to the world. I think Michael Ironside is a gift to the world. He is
wholeheartedly agree.
He is fantastic, especially when his arms get ripped off at the end of the movie.
See you at the party, Victor.
Yes, see you at the party. Oh, great scene. Him screaming, hanging on the elevator. Fantastic.
His bloody stumps. He's flailing his bloody stumpy arms at the. We need that. Okay, I know this is a big thing now with movies. We need to really appreciate the use of practical squibs, even though they had no other alternative at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But like every time somebody gets shots, they erupt in like a bloody, pulpy mess. And
Paul
that's
Verhoeven
severely
is the
missing from today's movies.
Paul Verhoeven is the master of the squib, as far as I'm concerned. Not just this movie with the civilian on the escalator, but RoboCop, the scene with the ED what 209 or whatever.
Yep, Ed 209.
When it shoots up the businessman in the boardroom.
Drop your gun. Drops it.
I like what is that? Like 150 squibs per take at least.
Yeah.
It's amazing. People don't realize how much work, not just how much like intelligence or how much effort, but the actual sitting there and resetting that for a take. No one thinks about that. That is amazing.
It really is. Like, that's what's a shame. The fact that nobody remembers this movie. Like, even like when people talk about Paul Verhoeven movies now, it's like automatically RoboCop, Starship Troopers, and shockingly is Showgirls. Like, Showgirls is like a meteor. Like, I think people now are just discovering how weird that movie was. And I think there's more of a, I guess in the age now where everything, like, there's no sexual taboos anymore. So it's like that's just celebrated for just being so.
Yeah.
I think so many different like niche communities are also celebrating that movie. I think about Paul Verhoeven was more or less known for Basic Instinct. Like, that was his claim to fame.
That's what I was going to say. That's the movie that most people when I talk about Paul Verhoeven, they bring up Basic Instinct most, in my experience.
And I think that's probably his weakest Hollywood film.
I mean, in terms of any aspect other than how amazing Sharon Stone is, yes.
Well, but like that's the sad thing about that movie, though. That movie's entire legacy is the fact that he showed Sharon Stone's hoo-ha. Like, I think about it, nobody looks at that movie for what it is beyond that.
No,
it's not very good.
Yes, that was a big part culturally of that movie, but I think Sharon Stone in that movie is one of the greatest characters ever. I really like what she does in that movie.
Respectfully disagree.
Maybe we'll have to do Paul Verhoeven. Who knows? Maybe we'll have to do Sharon Stone.
Oh, God. We do it. Then we do Basic Instinct, too. And we talk about the sad mess that movie is. No, but like I said, going back to Total Recall, there is, like I said, but like I was thinking about it, too. It's like, think about it. This movie is so weird. When was the last time a movie as weird as this came out, like in major release, and made anywhere near as much money as this?
You know what? So the money aspect I cannot speak to. I do not follow the box office and how much money movies make as closely as Zack does, but I actually have an answer to his question. Okay. If I can think of a more recent movie that I think of as something not similar to Total Recall in terms of story, but in terms of visuals that was wildly successful, I'm going to put forward Pan's Labyrinth. I think of these two movies as very visually similar.
Yeah, but that wasn't mainstream. Like I said, that movie made money, but it did not make $200 and like something million.
And so yes, that's what I'm saying. I cannot talk on the money aspect of it, but in terms of me and who I talk to in my circles and the cultural impact of movies, I would say that Pan's Labyrinth is more of our generation's visual version of Total Recall. At least the last 30 minutes when you get to the Martians and the mutants community type of thing.
Well, I guess I'm not going to argue about weirdness, because weirdness is constantly the bar keeps getting either raised or lower depending on your opinion of it every single year. But like I'm trying to think of something again. It's the whole idea of like this. I think about it, this resonated with audiences during the summer of 1990.
Yes.
People said, I'm going to see Total Recall before I'm going to look up its opening weekend. What was playing opening weekend for Total Recall? Like, this is opening. Yeah. This is opening week. If you were going to, it opened June 1st, 1990. So you're talking prime summer real estate.
Oh, blockbuster territory right there.
Yes. This was your choice of movies. I'm going to do the top 5 movies right now.
Okay.
Total Recall, Back to the Future Part 3.
Oh, shit.
Bird on a Wire.
I don't know what that is.
Neither do I. Pretty Woman.
Great.
And And that had been in theaters for 11 weeks at this point.
Oh my God!
So that's a major holdover.
So I've seen it already. Okay.
And Cadillac Man.
I never saw that.
Yeah, and that's my point. Is that those are kind of your main choices. And so, like, okay, but think about Back to the Future Part 3. That was a major franchise. This made more money that year than wait. Make sure I got that right. I don't want to say that wrong.
Was it the opening weekend for Back to the Future Part 3?
No, it was its second weekend.
Second, okay.
For the year of 1990, Total Recall made $30 million more than, no, actually $40 more than, $40 more.
$40?
Yes, $40.
$40 million?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was reading that. Oh my God, I can't see my glasses. Excuse me. I'm just going to read out loud. So during the summer, Total Recall, or that whole year, made almost $120 million. Back to the Future Part 3 only made $88 million.
Okay. 88? Back to the Future made $88 million?
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
They hit 88. That's all you need. It doesn't matter what any other movie made. Back to the Future made 88. I'm happy. Oh, that was great. That was the greatest conclusion to whatever nonsense you just had me listen to.
So like I said, this was like the last movie. I'm not sure. Have you ever seen Lucy with Scarlett Johansson?
No, I have not.
That's probably the last movie that made a lot of money. And it was very weird at the same time.
The one other thing that I want to say, I mentioned to Zack before we recorded this. This is by length of writing. This movie has the least amount of notes of everything we've talked about so far, and things we're going to talk about in the future, even. So while I don't have many points to hit, there are some that I feel that we should talk about. The one that I want to bring up right now, of I think the two that I think we really need to hit before we get into the important stuff for this podcast. The first is the very famous line, "Get your ass to Mars."
Get your ass to Mars. Get your ass to Mars. Get your ass to Mars.
Get your ass to Mars.
Mars.
Get your ass to Mars. Get your ass to Mars. So, this is a textbook example of just beautifully parsimonious writing. I think a big problem of movies today, Men, Women, and Children is probably a good example. Whenever a writer needs to explain an idea, they jam too many words in. There's too many characters talking. There's too much dialogue. Just give me the basic idea of what is going on in this movie. And that is what Total Recall does. Literally, the only transition that we have from Arnold going from Earth to Mars is the line, "Get your ass to Mars. Get your ass to Mars." Beautiful. That's all we need. It works so well as a writing device. It's so simple and so powerful. You cannot, whether you like this movie or not, clearly Zack and I like this movie, but if you watch it and you hate it, you cannot disagree with the fact that that is an example of perfectly simple writing. It conveys every aspect you need to know in the smallest amount of space.
Well, I think that's another reason why it also resonated with us, too, as children, is that it was very simple to follow.
It's simple to follow, but it's not just simple. Where I said Star Wars The Clone Wars was a kid's movie. This is not a kid's movie. This movie is not overall simple. It's simple where it needs to be. It doesn't overcomplicate parts of the movie that are irrelevant, that I think movies today do a lot of. The other thing that I want to bring up, I did it in Men, Women, and Children. I've done it in a few movies we've talked about now. My favorite line of the movie. This is becoming a thing, I think, because we got Naomi Watts talking about dessert for every meal in Book of Henry. We got J.K. Simmons screaming, "Don't daddy me!" in Men, Women, and Children. The best line in this movie, Zack, is right near the end. We have a beautifully shot scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rachel Ticotin are running from the bad guys, trying to get to the Martian device, and Arnold finally uses his hologram watch. So earlier in the movie, they establish Arnold can like basically make a projection of himself, and it can trick people. And we get a scene where Arnold uses this. He uses this hologram watch to trick some of the bad guys. And for the remainder of the fight scene, the bad guys don't know if they're looking at Arnold or not. And oh my God, Zach, it's the best line in this movie. It might be the best line in cinematic history, maybe of the 90s. A group of bad guys, like grunts, they're gonna die, they, like 3 of them, they come up on Arnold. And Arnold just goes, ha 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 ha, you think this is the real Quaid? It is, and shoots them. There's no pause in any part of the dialogue. It goes from, here's my trick, to here's reality, you're dead, in 2 seconds.
You think this is the real Quaid? It is.
It's the best line of the movie. Do you know what I'm talking about, Zach?
I love that.
We have to play this clip probably 60 times over and over.
You think this is the real Quaid? It is.
No, it's less of a pause than that. You think this is the real Quaid? It is. And he turns in one fluid motion and says it is and shoots them all. Good old Arnold one-hand shooting style. I don't know if you noticed that he never shoots a gun with two hands.
I love it. I love the fact that no matter what movie it is, he uses like a machine gun with one hand. It's like if somebody used 2 hands, they probably couldn't even fire the gun straight for more than like 2 seconds.
He has a machine gun in one hand, and he's holding a fucking dead body by its suit jacket in the other, using it as a shield at one point.
The guns look like the handguns look like a cross between like an Uzi and like a pistol. It's like they're so they're like not comically large, but like they're obviously too big for just a pistol, but they're too small for like a machine gun. And it's like in every single character pretty much uses the same gun. Like, the only time I've noticed that they use a different gun is when like Michael Ironside's like chasing Benny and them in the cab. He like knocks out the window, has like what? It's like a shotgun, but has like a really long barrel.
Yes. It's a non. So I don't know if Zack is familiar with it or if our audience is familiar with it, but you have a shotgun versus a sawed-off shotgun. If you've played video games, that comes up a lot. Imagine someone sawed off the barrel of a shotgun, and then they glued the excess barrel onto a full shotgun. That's what this looks like, an extra barrel shotgun.
And it's funny, he uses it, and he still can't hit them.
Yeah,
he hits every part of the cab, but he can't.
That's why it's a fantasy. He's not supposed to hit them. It's Arnold living out a dream. It's Arnold living out a video game. He's not supposed to die. You could say that about
every Arnold movie. Every Arnold movie is Arnold living out a fantasy where he can't die.
We're not talking about. Oh my God! Yeah, you want to talk about Last Action Hero, where they literally make that the plot of the movie?
I love that movie.
It's a great movie, but that's the plot of the movie. That he is literally in a movie. I think I have said everything about the specific points of the movie that I want to about Total Recall. We have some things to hit, though. Do you have anything more specific to the movie, though?
So I love Thumbelina, the actress that stabs the guy in the dick, who gets on top of the bar and fires a machine gun.
Oh, so Zack did not have the experience of listening to my commentary of Total Recall like he did for Men, Women, and Children. But in my commentary of Total Recall, I do say, and I'm reading off of my notes right here, this movie allows me to see a midget shoot a machine gun. I am happy. And yes, that might not be politically correct, but I am not being offensive. I am rejoicing in this movie using such an actress in that way. It's beautiful. It's great. She's a great part. She dies, too, with the 3-boob lady, unfortunately.
No, she doesn't.
Doesn't she get shot?
No, she survives to the very end. No, she survives with Tony and the bartender.
Okay, we gotta watch Total Recall again right now.
Okay, get back in the car. We're going back to the Blockbuster.
No, we'll do that as an update. With Lee Majors as well.
Yes, Lee Majors. So let's because I don't think there's anything that you and I can add to this movie beyond just our thoughts that hasn't already been discussed probably numerous times.
You should see it. You should listen to what we've talked about. We have some interesting thoughts. I think the Coca-Cola versus Pepsi thing is difficult to pick up on, and it's really cool. I'm still saying that. That's one of my favorite aspects of this movie, how subtle that is.
Yeah,
Love
there's
it.
a lot of small touches in this film that you really have to. You can only pick up on if you watch it numerous times.
Yes. But we have some things to talk about, Zach. And the first...
Dean Norris.
Dean Norris. Tony in this movie. Do you want to start with Dean Norris in this movie, Zach? Because I think you understand what I have to say about Dean Norris. It has nothing... It has somewhat to do with Total Recall, but it has more to do with the conspiracy that I've been running with.
Nope.
So do you want to start?
Nope.
You want me to start?
I'll get you started. Cue the X-Files music, please.
So you want to jump right into the Dean Norris conspiracy again? We're doing this.
You know what? I'm a big fan of Cirque du Soleil, so I love your mental gymnastics and make all these pieces connect to each other. So please.
Okay, where are we? Where are we right now? So far in the Dean Norris series, we watched The Book of Henry, where he plays Glenn Sickelman. He's abusing his daughter, and he fakes his own death at the end of it. We also watched Men, Women, and Children, where he played Kent Mooney, where he reattached with one of his children after really misunderstanding them and causing them to almost commit suicide, or I don't know, he at least made his child think that pills are M&Ms, something like that. But here we are now, where Dean Norris is playing a resident of Mars, and as we said, he moved to Mars before they had good radiation shields. So the atmosphere on Mars is much, much thinner than what we have on Earth. It doesn't block as much UV and all the other great things the sun gives us, great in air quotes, all the cancer-causing things that the sun gives us. And so when he moved to Mars with his family, I think they kind of established at the end that his daughter is the deformed girl from the movie, right? Like they hug each other or something?
Yeah, but to say it's ambiguous would be generous.
Okay, yeah, like family or no family, Dean Norris is deformed. He has radiation deformation, which I don't think occurs. I don't think you can be deformed by radiation after you're born. I think you can just get sick from it, like your organs just boil. Regardless, this movie's perfect. I'm not trying to poke holes in the science behind this movie. Dean Norris, I would say 2/3 of his face are covered by makeup in this movie. Is that accurate? 2/3, you think, Zach?
Yeah, there's I would say a vast majority of his face is he's acting through makeup.
You get one eye and half a mouth. I think that's all we get from Dean Norris in this movie.
Yeah.
And Dean Norris plays a minor role as one of the, I guess you want to call it, resistance members. He's working with Rachel Ticotin to take down Cohagen and stuff like that. He doesn't really interact with Arnold too much, but when he does interact with Arnold, we have a great repartee, and I'm sure Zach remembers this. Dean Norris says to Arnold Schwarzenegger, "You got a lot of nerve showing your face around here." And Arnold comes back with the wonderful retort to the deformed Dean Norris.
Look who's talking.
Look who's talking. It's beautiful.
You got a lot of nerve showing your face around here, Hauser.
Look who's talking.
That's really the biggest scene we get with Dean Norris, I think, other than a few shootouts or something. So I'm not here to talk about what Dean Norris does in this movie. Where does this line up in Dean Norris's exploration through universes? And so as I mentioned in our previous episode, Men, Women, and Children, we have Book of Henry. That's a floating point right now. We have Men, Women, and Children, which is late in the game. That is late in Dean Norris's career, in Dean Norris's lifetime. We have Sophia the First. We haven't talked about that in detail yet, but that's right after Book of Henry. So I want to spin it this way. I want to continue to thread out the mystery a little longer. Picture this. We got Book of Henry. Right after Book of Henry, we got Sophia the First. Dean Norris becomes a purple Pegasus to get to Wild Wing Valley. Oh, we're gonna talk about that one, Zach. And then we got a blank. Then we have a blank. After Sophia the First, there's a blank. I don't want to reveal, even though I think I did in the last episode. Right now, I don't want to reveal what that blank is. But after that blank, then Dean Norris moves to Mars, gets deformed, and has a big role in Arnold Schwarzenegger's fantasy of Total Recall. Does it make sense, Zach? Did I leave anything out? Am I painting the big picture here?
I think you're painting it pretty clearly.
Okay. Are you saying that so I don't say anymore, or are you saying that because I am?
As clearly as any insane person could.
No, but so we got Book of Henry, Sophia the First, blank, Total Recall, indefinite blank. I'm not saying one blank space. I'm saying maybe multiple blank spaces, and then Men, Women, and Children. That's where we are at right now with our Dean Norris series. I think this is the first time I'm mentioning it, but Zack is well aware of it. But here we go for the audience. When we hit the end of our Dean Norris series, I am going to give a complete, detailed rundown of Dean Norris's career, why he did what he did, how he did what he did, and all those things. So bear with me. We're setting the stage right now. So I guess I will turn the table now to Zack. Do you have anything to say about Dean Norris in this movie? He's great in this movie, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, he is.
Do you have any more detail?
Considering this is one of his earlier acting roles, he is legitimately solid in this. And it's surprising that it took him this long to really kind of catch on. It took him, 20 years, give or take, to sit to really kind of hit his stride?
Yeah, I honestly would say that Breaking Bad was his breakthrough role. He only played smaller, subpar, SWAT team leader roles before that.
His greatest roles are in the SWAT team leader ones.
I can tell every time I have these conspiracies about Dean Norris and Naomi Watts and all these things, and we're going to get to it with J.K. Simmons and all these other actors because everything's connected. Zack's given me a lot of leeway, Zack has the spray bottle. You should know that, audience. When I get too off the rails, Zack starts spritzing me with straight battery acid. He saved up battery acid in a bottle to spritz me with when I'm getting too off the rails.
If only that would work.
But he's given me some good leeway on the Dean Norris conspiracy, and I'm really happy about that.
Every time he starts talking about this, I just imagine all the editing that I have to go through. It's okay, this is going to be
keep it. Make it the whole episode. Okay, so we talked about Dean Norris. We have Dean Norris in the context of our Dean Norris series. We have other questions to talk about. So, late at night, and you have someone in your clutches, whether it be a girlfriend, boyfriend, someone you're hanging out with, an action figure on your dresser.
Yeah.
Do you show them Total Recall? Zack, what do you think? I want to start with you this time. I'm not even asking. I want to know you first.
I'm going to say no.
Elaborate. Elaborate.
Elaborate. The reason why is that it's not a Cinemoddity. It's mainstream. It doesn't need. It stands on its own footing. It doesn't need to be. It's not an oddity. It's inherently it's mainstream. Everybody, even though I made the comment saying that people probably don't remember this as much as they should, it's within the pantheon of, I remember that movie. That's pretty good. It's weird, but I think that's what it is. I think it's elevated beyond a Cinemoddity.
How can you say that?
It's a compliment to the movie.
Zach? Yeah, well, it's a compliment, but I wouldn't say it's excelled past a Cinemoddity. I would say it's a Cinemoddity on a tier that very few other films stand on. I'm going to say yes. When we talk about movies, late night, early morning, regardless of the setting, we always say that we want people to feel something from it. We want to have a discussion about this movie. And that is the point of this movie. When this movie ends, the only thought I have is, was it a dream or not? And that's what I want other people to think. That is the entire gist of this movie to me. And I think it's a late night movie and a Cinemoddity just for the fact that it makes you question yourself. It makes you question what you saw, and there's no good answer. We cannot argue one way or the other. It's not like we can put to bed what people should think about this movie. It is ambiguous. That makes it both a Cinemoddity and a late night movie for me.
All right.
I didn't sell you? You're not convinced? I was trying to sell you.
I'm saying that if people don't look at this movie, the reason why people don't remember this movie is not because it's too weird. It's not I don't want anything to do with that. It's not remembered just because it's just overshadowed by other things that have tried to usurp it or just fade into the background. Unfortunately, this movie, again, the 2012 remake certainly didn't do this movie any favors in the legacy department, because it's just like people are like, oh, that movie. It's like, no, there's a good one. It's like, yeah, but it's like, it gets a stink on it. It creates a stigma around the Total Recall brand, if that even is a thing. And plus, I don't think any movie that a 9-year-old is watching is a Cinemoddity. I know you're going to argue the Clone Wars.
Yes.
I know, but Clone Wars is a Cinemoddity for adults. Like, if I was introducing Star Wars to a 9-year-old, I would not start with that movie. I think you look at that movie again. You look at, like, why on earth did George Lucas make this as an entry point into children? Because of just how weird it is at times. But I don't. This movie's too mainstream and it's too good. Like, I feel a Cinemodities is kind of like a Scarlet Letter, something of that sort. And I feel this movie deserves.
A Cinemoddity is a badge of honor, and this movie wholeheartedly deserves it.
It deserves better than a Cinemoddity.
What? We are top tier. We are top tier, Zach.
That's the fun thing about this podcast, is that we're learning what a Cinemoddity. We are defining what a Cinemoddity is to each other every single episode.
I have a steadfast understanding of what should be a Cinemoddity, and Zach is like, oh, we're just going to play with Play-Doh every week. That was a terrible Marge Simpson impression.
No, but it's true, though. I love this movie. It's the same reason why, like I said, for the same arguments, I could put Star Wars Return of the Jedi as a Cinemoddity, but I'm not, because it's too
because it's
beyond
not
that.
Because that is not a Cinemoddity.
You watch Jabba's Palace, and that alone gets you into the city. You got Ewoks; those alone get you into the club as well.
Oh God!
But it's too. This movie is too good for a Cinemoddity. A Cinemoddity, it's a cinematic oddity. This movie's weird, but it's being intentionally so. It's competently made. There's nothing. It's visually bizarre, but it's intentionally.
Yes, it's a created product. This wasn't an accident. Someone had a great idea and employed it and delivered it fantastically. This is a Cinemoddity because it leaves you with an unanswerable question. You can only have an opinion on whether or not he was dreaming. You cannot prove it. That's why it's a Cinemoddity. So many movies are steadfast. This is not.
So does an ambiguous ending automatically give you entrance into the Cinemodities?
This goes back to the point of how this movie is different from Inception. Inception is an ambiguous ending. This is literally an ambiguous story. The point of this movie is you do not know if it's happening or not. That is not the point of Inception until you see the end. That is the point of this movie from the start.
I don't really agree with that, though, because if just the fact that it leaves you with a question mark, but the movie does. Like, when I walk out of this movie, I never wondered. I never was puzzled by the ending. It's like they saved the day in the end. Whether that's real to him or not doesn't really matter. The day has been saved.
Yes, it matters. That's the entire purpose.
Not to me, it's not.
Zach has spazzed out many times on this podcast. I think this is the first time I am spazzing out on this podcast.
Like I said, I cannot rationalize putting a legitimate blockbuster that's made, again, that has that much of mainstream approval. And never mind, I don't think there's anything bizarre about this movie other than the makeup, which, again, it's intentionally done so. There's nothing that's outside. I think it's too good for our ranking. It's like I would not put Citizen Kane on this list. I wouldn't put. I'm trying to think. Where's some genuinely good movies?
We haven't gotten to the Orson Welles series yet.
Well, we can only hope we get to that series. We're around long enough for that.
We need syndication to get to the Orson Welles series.
Yes. No, like I said, but I think there's certain movies like that are practically perfect. Again, there's some flaws here and there. Nothing is 100% ideal. But I think this is one of those movies where I'd say calling it a Cinemoddity gives it it assigns an adjective to it, which I think it doesn't deserve. It's like, this is a fantastic movie. Watch it because it lives on its own merits, not because it has weird elements to it. It's just a great story through and through.
I disagree completely with Zack. Well, not in the fact that it's a great story through and through. I agree with all of that. But it is a Cinemoddity. It is so weird in terms of, I would say, all the movies we have, all the movies we're continuing to get. It is a brain buster. It makes you think. It leads to discussion. And for all those reasons, you absolutely would show it to someone late at night. I honestly think, to put it in perspective, if I had someone that I maybe had just met, maybe not, it was not a stranger, but someone who I'm kind of getting to know, I would have a hard time deciding whether to play for them this movie, Total Recall, or Fantastic Planet. It would be a difficult decision for me. But this is on the list. This is up there. This is as hard as a yes as Fantastic Planet was.
Like I said, it's the whole idea. I'm not arguing whether you should share this with people. It's the idea of I do not, like you said, you could watch it any time of the day. You could watch it in the morning. You have it with a nice brunch. You could have it with early dinner. I do not think this movie is just exclusive to something you put on after hours. I think it rises above that. I think that's what it is. It deserves better than our rankings.
So I think
it's not odd.
We
it's cinematic,
disagree,
but it's not odd.
We disagree in the placement of that. You say it doesn't deserve that spot as being played as a late night movie. I think it is so good that it transcends multiple spots. That it is not too good for any one thing. It is so good that it lends itself to all these uses. I think. What I'm
trying to say is, I think it's so good we shouldn't just tie it to one adjective or one level or one plateau. I think like I said, you can show this to a 9-year-old, and it's not to be cynical. It's not to laugh at it or be anything like that. It's just the whole idea of it's a great movie. There's no like I think with a Cinemoddity, you have to. It's just kind of like, it's almost like an in joke. Like, okay, what's a Cinemoddity? Well, it's a movie that's so bizarre or so this that you can't just show it. Like I said, I could sit there, put this on. Like, I guess I don't know, like how I wanted to watch Terminator during Thanksgiving. It's like certain movies are just timeless. And like you said, the visual effects, the acting, the story, it can be appreciated in that way. I don't think to limit it just to a late night movie, or at least my understanding of late night movies, I don't think does it justice, because you could really, like, it's like, oh, we're doing a new like, imagine you're telling someone about this. It's like, oh, I have this new podcast called Cinemodities, where we talk about movies that are too bizarre, off-kilter for contemporary audiences. And it's like, oh, we put Total Recall on the list. Hey, Janie, I want to show your 12-year-old son this. Well, didn't you say you talk about weird movies? Yeah, but it's not that weird. It's kind of safe. Well, then why is it on your list then? I gotta go now. Bye. Yoink. And that's my issue, though, is that you could show this movie to anybody who's like, the only thing that's weird is the visual effects and the makeup. And if you're willing to get past that, which I think most people are, I think most people are more than desensitized to that, you could show it to practically anyone at any time. They air this on like Sundays on AMC at like 2 in the afternoon.
Yes, you can show it to anyone at any time.
But the whole point of Cinemodities,
it's a late night movie.
But you can't show a Cinemoddity to everyone, though. You can't show it to everyone. Cinemoddity has to be it's late at night, right before you go to bed, and it has to be in that mood.
Yes, and this fits the bill perfectly.
Disagree.
Zack and I disagree on Dean Norris movies, should they be in our list of canon. But there's a question that Zack and I can agree on, must be answered every single time. Zack, what snack do you eat during Total Recall?
Undeclared fruits and vegetables.
Undeclared fruits and vegetables.
Or a little tracker beacon shoved into a candy bar, lobbed across the room.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was very tempted because of that exact scene with the tracker egg in his head and stuff like that. What is it called? Like a Kinder egg? Or those eggs that had like toys in them that are banned because kids were choking on them?
Yes.
That's what you should eat during this movie. But pretend the things in the chocolate are trackers, and you got to get them out of you.
So you shove it up your nose?
I have eaten certain things like that before, so why not?
Okay, then.
Specifically popcorn. You put some popcorn up your nose? Not bad. No. So in all seriousness, I do want to say that the snack I feel you should eat while you're watching this movie, this is a first in Cinemodities history. I am not facetiously saying popcorn. This is a really, really good popcorn movie. I know I said popcorn for Fantastic Planet because they were inhaling popcorn and there was a whole thing with that. But when I think of blockbusters, when I think of really good movies that you're on the edge of your seat, it never stops coming at you. You're enthralled the whole time. Popcorn does that trick. That's why popcorn's tied to movie theaters. It's something that is very easy to chew, very easy to eat. And this is a popcorn movie for me. Like eating something quickly in the chase scenes, in the action scenes, it makes me get into that emotion. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I feel you.
And I feel that this kind of makes your point a little bit, that this can't be a cinemoddity, because I've just described it as a popcorn blockbuster.
There we go.
I'm not agreeing with Zach, though. Zach is
no.
Zach is wrong.
Rob wants to hold this movie down by attaching our labels to it. He wants to rub our stink on this movie, which I will not allow him to do. I'm telling Total Recall to be free. I'm like, be free. I'm like, get out of here, quick, before he rubs his stink on you. And I'm like batting and say, quick, get out of here.
We are top tier. We are as worthy as the Oscars, the Emmys, anything like that.
I think you just devalued us even further by comparing us to those. You lowered the bar even further. Quick, Total Recall, get out of here. Run, head to the mountains.
I'm a little humiliated to ask this, because we've been at this for a while now. It's been a few weeks we've been recording, right? A few weeks?
At least.
But we haven't thought about how to end an episode. Do you have any idea? Have you thought of anything yet?
No, it's actually...
Are you serious? You didn't even... I think I
know.
told you last time to think of something.
Don't make me cry.
Oh,
I hate... You know you hate it when I cry.
Are we really going to have to do the backwards version of the song again?
It seems like the thing to do, unfortunately.
What we got left. Jesus, they're not even happy about it. I mentioned this before. Okay, here we go. Backwards version of the song. I hope you'll like it.